So, as Father Anthony said, I'm originally from Ghana, and I grew up in a family that was multi-religious. There were Christians, there were Muslims, and also there were people of the African traditional religion. For example, some of my siblings were not Christians. They didn't go to church. They practiced the traditional religion. And so growing up, I was able to get a feel of all these other religions, and hence my interest in interreligious dialogue. And what I've realized is that there hasn't been a lot written about ecological conversion so far from the African perspective. So I thought this would be the right time to also share something from that part. So we begin. So there are a few statements or things that are underpinning my research. So in his encyclical, Laudato Si, Pope Francis called on people of different religions to collaborate in bringing about change in how we treat the environment. And that's number 201. And to quote it directly, the majority of people living on our planet profess to be believers. And so if there are many believers, this should spur us on to dialogue and the different religions for the sake of protecting nature, defending the poor, and building networks of respect and fraternity. So that was the first thing I thought called for different religions to collaborate. And then another document I looked at was Nostra Aetate, and paragraph 2 also talks about the church or the Catholic Church accepting things that are loving and true from other religions. So if there could be something true and loving from the African religion, in our fight to protect nature, why don't we also consider it? So still, there's that call for collaboration, and it was way before Pope Francis. So it's against this background that I thought I would like to consider what the African traditions have to offer. But also, Pope Benedict, in the Apostolic Exhortation, Africae Munus, also asked that the church in Africa should learn or seek knowledge from the traditional religions. So we should collaborate and see what is worth learning from them. And for him, he asked that we should consult experts from that religion and also adherents and converts. I don't claim to be any of these, but because I lived with them, I think I have a bit to also share, as I said from the beginning. So there is this question, do we talk about African traditional religion or religions? In my article, I argue for African traditional religions in the plural sense. And it's because there are multiplicities of them, despite the similarities. But they mostly differ in beliefs and practices. So you might even go to one village in Africa, and specifically in Ghana, where what people believe in concerning their deities is quite different from what other groups within the same village believe in. So in view of the pluralism of Africanness, the religion tends to be ethnocentric. It's more of ethnic groups. So consequently, it is more accurate to speak of African traditional religions. And this is John Porby, a Ghanaian theologian. So I tend to stand by this point. Although they may all believe in deities, there are vast differences between them, and it's hard to make all of them one. So then I thought I will share about my own background. It's our worldview, because in Ghana we have different tribes. So if I want to talk about even Ghanaian traditional religion, it will be so broad to talk about. And so I try to single out my tribe. So here I describe what my tribe is. And we are mostly centered around the middle and southern parts of Ghana. And there are some of my tribe who also live in the neighboring country, the country to our west, which is Cote d'Ivoire or Ivory Coast. So one tribe, but in two different countries. And we traditionally believe in three main groups of otherworldly beings. So first is the supreme being, in other words, God. There are the lesser beings, or the gods, and also the ancestors. But then, even though the supreme being or God is active in the lives of the people, the gods and the ancestors seem very immediate in everyday lives of the people. Our language is full of God. Our proverbs, you hear of God. Our songs, you hear of God. But at the same time, the everyday conversations with people, even with some Christians, you're more likely to hear about the gods and the ancestors. And so for these people, the gods tend to live in the flora and the fauna. So in the trees, in the rivers, in the mountains. So these creatures tend to become a kind of sacrament, something, a symbol pointing to the deities. And in this sense, rivers are not just treated as some amount of water flowing. They believe the rivers are kind of possessed or have power. Some trees, not every tree, some trees are believed to have a kind of power because perhaps the spirits inhabit them. Some mountains. And for my people, this was how they basically conserved the environment. It wasn't about making laws. It was about what they believed in. The fact that they believed the trees, the river, the mountain, some animals are sacred, and so you kept them as such. And it's highly possible for you to go to a village where there may be a river and nobody fishes in the river because they may believe these fishes are sacred and nobody gets to eat them. So the Akan cosmology or the Akan worldview is highly anthropomorphic because in the language we use human qualities for these created stuff, but it's benignly anthropocentric. There is a kind of anthropocentrism, but it's not so harsh. Let me put it that way, because we believe that it's only in the balance between our lives with the environment that there will always be harmony. And so if we went about polluting the rivers, they believed there will be repercussions, there will be consequences. And for that reason, people lived in harmony with creation, but still that human tendency was there, not so harsh. And so that's what I say. We believe that any disturbances to the ecology will bring bad consequences to people. And for that matter, we needed to treat environment with decorum, with respect. But today, this is the state of the ecology in Ghana. It's illegal mining. And in the local language, we call it galamsey. So where did we go wrong if we believe that the rivers were not just water, but had some sense of spirit? If the mountains were sacraments or symbols pointing to the sacred, why did we get here? But today, this is what is happening right in Ghana. The one on your right used to be a river, but now this is what is happening to the river. As we go on, we may understand a little bit why we've gotten here today. So you can still see where rivers will be blocked in order for people to mine. And as they mine for gold in the rivers, they use cyanide and other chemicals, which tend to kill the fishes and all the other creatures in the sea, the river. And after this kind of mining, the land is no more good for farming. And generally in Ghana, people are farmers. But this is what is happening. They finish with these illegal forms of mining, and the land is left not repaired. And as the Pope says in Laudato Si, it's mostly the poor who suffer. But this is what is happening in Ghana today. So I put this picture specifically with the soldiers because when this whole thing started, the government started a task force of soldiers who will go to the forest just to drive away those doing this. And it's been 5 years now. This hasn't worked. So it's like nothing is going to deter the people from doing what they're doing. But it's real. That is what is going on. So for me, how did we get here? I'm not here to blame any religion. Let me issue that disclaimer. But I guess the advent or the coming of the Judeo-Christian religions, and as Pope John Paul mentions and also Pope Francis, perhaps the interpretations we gave to some of the biblical texts where we were to subdue and conquer, that could have been. But most importantly, one factor that has contributed to this is what we call power encounter. And this is something I saw for the first time in my research. I knew it was happening, but I didn't know the name. This is where one religion wants to prove to the other that my God or my deity is powerful than yours. So if the African traditional religion, the adherents, believe that the rivers had power, I will prove to you that the river had no power. So I'll go about and do something to prove you wrong. If you said the mountain had power, I will do something to the mountain to prove to you that it had no power. And this is also happening. So for me, some of these things could perhaps be the cause of where we are today. So it was taught that the gods or the spirit had no power at best, or even non-existent. There are no gods. And this is what the foreign religions made us believe. So just go about, do your thing. After all, nothing will happen. If you cut a tree, it's not going to disturb the balance of the ecology. Nothing will happen to you. The beliefs in taboos and myths were taken away, and in their place, nothing was put. So if the people were told that the river had no power, how did we now protect it? Now that that narrative is no more, what did we put for the people to still know that we got to protect environment? And it seems there was nothing. So with this hermeneutics, with this interpretation that the environment was just physical, people went about and tried to conquer. So for me, it's the complete mythologization where we took all the myths. And as we know, myths are not so wrong in themselves. They're not so bad in themselves. These are stories that tell some truth, though they may not be factual, but they carry some truth. But unfortunately, all these myths, these taboos, and these stories that protected the environment were taken away. And in their place, nothing was left. And also with industrialization today, all these have contributed to where we are as a country today. And so, what can we learn from the African traditional religions? For me, first and foremost, is perception. The way they see, understand, and interpret the environment. Whereas other people will see the environment as just physical trees, rivers, mountains, they saw more than just a tree. They saw more than just a river. They saw more than just a mountain to be exploited. They knew there was something more to the ecology. So one thing we can learn is the sacramentality of the environment, where we see the environment as a symbol pointing to a deeper reality. And being a sacrament, then the ecology is sacred, all because of what it points to. So even though it may be physical, it points to something deeper. And in my paper, I was advocating for a conscious move from the mythologization to remythologization. And remythologizing theology is not a call to fall back into mythology. It does not require that one turns one's back on contemporary science, no. Neither does it seek to project our best thoughts onto a superhuman being or repopulate the world with red devils and shopping demons. It has rather to do with going back to the scene of the hermeneutical crime. So where did the story change? Where did the interpretation change? Can we go back there? Because initially, this is what they saw. Now we've taken that away with our science, with our other religions. We've proven that what they believed in was not true. But what did we put in its place? There's nothing. So calling for ecological conversion is that change of mind and heart. Ecological conversion can happen when we change our perception, the way we see, think, and feel about the ecology. And here I ask a question: can we see as the adherents of the African traditional religions see? But are we Christians to see exactly as they were seeing? Are the rivers, trees, mountains, fauna, are they gods? For us Christians, people who have come to believe in Jesus will say no, they're not gods. But what are they? And in my research, I was able to see this, which was very interesting. We are to see nature as the body of God. We perhaps need to see the whole creation in the sense of the cosmic Christ. With the cosmic Christ, Richard Rohr explains that incarnation, yes, happened 2,000 years ago. But even before Jesus' incarnation, there had been the first incarnation, which was he saying was the Big Bang, when God took on materiality. So from that time, the whole of creation has been imbued by God. And creation now becomes that body of God, that sacrament pointing to the deeper reality, which is God.
5 more minutes.
Okay. So with Teilhard de Chardin, he would say, through your own incarnation, my God, all matter is henceforth incarnate. So for me, we're not to see the rivers, the trees, and the mountains as gods as they saw, but it's about also the way we see. And can we see it as a body of God through the whole story of the incarnation, where God took on materiality and henceforth all matter has become incarnate. So for me, this was what I would put it a snippet of my whole work. And I think later on, when we begin to ask questions, I may be able to clarify or go deeper into some of the other stuff. But thank you very much for your attention.